to episode 150 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who spent over 6 hours of his day today in the car, John Scott Sloat.
It's the job, Matt. It's the job.
It is the job. Yes. Yeah. So what a day. Or what a night now.
Yeah. Listeners should know it's dark outside, and not because you and I are up early recording.
No.
It's because it's late at night.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, for you practically, but
for me, indeed.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we are recording on a Thursday evening.
Classic.
Yeah. For a next Tuesday episode. So by the time this drops, it'll be like 5 days after we've recorded.
Who knows what'll happen
for all
in
we
the next
know,
5
the
days.
world may have come to an end, and this episode may never air. But
I'll schedule it tomorrow. It'll air.
So yeah, it's a combination of factors. The main thing being next week I will be out of town at the ETS conference.
Where's that at this year?
It's in Denver.
Denver. What's the theme?
Holiness.
Okay. Who's the honcho sort of leading us through that this year?
It's a good question. I'm not sure.
Because normally they have a guy that's sort of like.
Well, it's whoever they've elected as president.
And is it a yearly appointment?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. For some reason, I'm thinking it's Craig Keener, but I could be wrong on that.
Okay. Surprised it's not Miracles. Craig Keener.
Yes. So what that means is then the week that this episode drops, I will be in Denver. You'll be here.
Mm-hmm. I don't record alone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have yet to venture into the solo hosting.
I don't know if I have it in me.
40 to 45 minutes of just talking by yourself.
I would have to. I mean, that sounds like a long sermon, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would have to manuscript basically.
Yeah, and it would require you to do prep, which we all know.
I don't do prep.
To do.
I don't do prep.
Yeah. So, well, if you'd like to get in touch with the show, you can find us on Twitter at VNSPod. You can email the show, variousandsunDrypodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube. And I mean, we just asked for more reviews and ratings 2 days ago, so I'm not sure that we've had any. I've not checked.
We haven't gotten any.
I didn't think so. Yeah.
No, we have not.
Okay.
Shame.
Yeah. So can we talk for a second about the fact this is 150 episodes?
Yep. Here we are.
Did you realistically think?
Nope, I never thought.
Get to 150 episodes.
No.
And especially to do 150 consecutive weeks.
Yeah, I never thought that was a possibility. I mean, we're almost at the 3-year mark.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, this show is slightly older than COVID.
This show's older than my marriage.
It is. Side note: let's hope your marriage lasts longer than this podcast. As much as I'm anticipating this podcast continuing on for some time at this point.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're in different departments at the school. We got to see each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Might as well be two birds.
Yeah. So 150 episodes.
150.
I didn't prep you for this, so this is totally off the cuff.
Awesome.
Here. How many of those episodes would you say are from your perspective, good?
Like really good?
Yeah, ones that you're like, and I'm not asking you to remember specific ones, but
Yeah.
just to ballpark a number out of 150. How many do you think that you'd look back and go, that was really good? I really like that.
10 to 15.
So maybe 10%.
Yeah.
At the top end of that number, 10%.
Yeah, I think it's like golf, What's important in golf is going out and hitting consistent shots. They don't all have to be perfect, but every now and then, at least one round, you get one really good one, and it feels really good. Yeah. And I feel similarly. Like we're 10 to out of 150, 10 to 15 shows.
Okay,
I think are really, really good.
Interesting.
How do you answer that question?
I'd have gone about twice that.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Wow. I think I'd have gone like 20 to 30.
That's because you put in more prep.
That's true. There's no denying that. I mean, if you think about the author interview ones by themselves, right? So, I mean, we've had Pennington, we had Dane Ortland,
Barnabas.
We had Barnabas Piper,
Randy.
and Randy Newman. So there's 4 that I feel really good about.
Yep.
So that's not even including anything. Really.
Although in one of those episodes, and this is me being self-critical, my office phone went off. Do you remember this when we were interviewing Barnabas? And it just starts ringing violently, and I had to stop it, and I had to think, what do we do? How do we fix this?
Yeah.
And then you threw me to a question, and I just totally blanked on what I was. So other than that, 30-second time period, I thought all 4 of those were great.
Okay. All right.
Yes. We need to get Randy Newman back and talk C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, we need to do that.
That'd be a lot of fun.
We absolutely need to do that.
Maybe we make a C.S. Lewis biography to read this summer, and we do that.
That's a possibility. Though I've got another idea as well.
Oh, okay.
Now, on the flip side of that, how many of those 150 episodes – now, again, I'm not asking you to pick specific ones, but do you think if you look back at the totality of them, how many of them would you be like, oh, my gosh, that was bad?
Oh, I think very few.
Okay.
I think we're a very consistent pod.
Okay.
Very few do I go, that was just miserable. I think there are days, and we've talked about this before, where coming into the studio is a grind.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, we are not getting paid for this.
No.
We are paying.
Costing us money. Yes.
So there are very few, less than 5, where I feel like that was not worth the listener's time.
I think that's probably right.
And maybe not worth our time.
Yeah. And there are also the 5 test episodes that we did.
Did we do 5?
I think we did 5.
Goodness. Well, we told some stories on there we can't tell.
Yeah, because they'd probably violate the number 1 rule of the podcast.
That's right.
Don't get fired.
Really the only rule of the podcast. That was when I remember you and I had a debate about Kanye.
Yeah.
We had a big Kanye debate.
Yeah. Boy, how that's aged well.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Yes. So I just thought that'd be a fun little, trip down memory lane.
150 episodes.
150 episodes. Who do you think has gotten the most shout-outs?
Probably Nate in Ohio.
Okay.
Maybe Tim Keller.
Are we exempting my wife? Because I feel like my wife gets mentioned a decent bit.
Yeah, if you take out the one thing I like, because oftentimes your one thing I like is my wife and I went and did X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
If you take those out, it's probably Nate in Ohio.
Yeah. Yes. So this is kind of funny. So my wife likes to claim to be the number 1 fan of the podcast, and she makes a strong case.
Mm-hmm. She listens to it. I think about when she's not teaching the second it drops.
Yes. So she mentions that to our pastor.
Oh, yes.
And he said, I think I listened to it first. Like he's
dedicated.
He's a dedicated the pretty much the moment it drops, it's going on. So
yeah. I think my in-laws are up there. They're in the top 5, top 10.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. But I think Nate in Ohio leads the race, don't you?
In mentions?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As far as top fan, Nate's up there. Nate's top 5.
Yeah, but only in a Nate way, right? Nate is not a.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is, Nate is a very even keel. He's not an excessively effusive person when it comes to expressing praise or excitement.
But I think even the text messages we do get, which we don't get every episode, but the ones we do, shows enthusiasm, even if they're a little critical.
Yeah. And let's be honest, it's almost always critical of you, not me.
Yeah, usually.
If we're just going to be straight up here, it's.
I think so. Yeah, that sounds right.
I think that's right.
Goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, the After Dark pod.
Yeah, this is unscripted, unplugged.
I think that's our title, After Dark Pod.
For the episode?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Then that's just it. Does your drinking habits change when you're at an After Dark Pod? What's in the mug over there?
Yeah, it's water, not coffee.
Okay.
Afternoon recordings are coffee.
Okay.
This is water. I see you got the water and tea, I think, right?
No.
Oh,
So I
you were
went
going
over.
to make tea.
I was going to make tea. This might be the most vainglorious episode we've ever had. I was going to make tea, and I saw a K-cup for apple cider.
Oh my!
So I made a little apple cider in the.
How is the Keurig K-cup apple cider?
Like most K-cup things, subpar but passable.
Yes, I think that's a fair description. Yeah, I mean, part of the reason that we're entertaining this sort of trip down memory lane is the fact that we really can't do any sports update because
We really can't.
I mean, everything is going to be completely out of date.
We can't even do a midterm update. I mean, the election's still going on.
Yeah, though that's not really a rule of the podcast, but we tend to avoid political talk.
Sure, even horse race stuff, yeah, okay.
I mean,
We're still waiting on Nevada and Arizona, right?
yeah,
And Georgia, I suppose.
yeah. Well, Georgia's going to go to a runoff, correct?
Yes,
Because you have to have a candidate get to 50%, and no one did. So then they take the top two and then
That's right.
do the runoff. Yeah,
yep, and that won't be it for another 3 weeks.
yeah, okay.
But Arizona, just so bad at counting.
There really should be no reason why we can't get votes counted a little faster than this in these states. But
Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to bring that up.
yes. Oh gosh. So
NBA's going on.
Yeah. Well yeah. Are you paying attention?
No.
I watched your Knicks last night, by the way, a little
Oh,
bit.
I think
and
they got thumped.
Stomped. I turned it on, and they were down like 30.
Yeah, that's not a good representation of the way the season's gone, though. So they've had some close games. I think they've lost now more than they've won, but they've had some close games and they've had some good performances from their players. But
Yeah.
they beat Milwaukee in Milwaukee.
Okay.
That feels like a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So we have already spent a decent bit of time together today before stepping into the studio in another state.
Yeah. Do you want to recap your last 24 hours? Maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe like 28 hours to get the drive.
Yeah. So I was invited to speak at Grace Polaris, a place I affectionately refer to as the Mothership within the Charis Fellowship.
Yeah. I think you and I are maybe the last people to do that.
Maybe. Yeah. So I spoke in their training program last night on a Wednesday night. So Zach in Ohio invited me to come in, basically did an overview of asking the right questions, which is fun. It's fun content to go through. And it was a good group. There was probably
I saw pictures. Seemed like –
it's a good group. I'm not very good at estimating numbers, but I want to say –
thousands?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean between 75 and 100. They even brought in some of the youth group.
That's great.
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun.
They do good. They do good things over there at Grace Polaris.
They do. And then
Polaris Grace, whatever.
Grace Polaris.
Polaris.
So then we hung out. I hung out with Zach in Ohio and his family. His kids are adorable.
Yep.
Absolutely adorable. And then this morning spoke at the Charis Fellowship it's district ministerium.
Yeah, North Central Ohio.
Yes. So I think Zach said like 22 churches are part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And
That
then
sounds right.
multiple staff from various churches and that sort of thing. So I think there's probably 40 there this morning.
Yeah, 40-ish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was fun. And then we went out to lunch at City Barbecue there.
Yeah, that was good.
That's good. Yeah. What did you have? I forget.
I had a pulled pork sandwich.
Okay.
It was good. It was definitely smoked.
Yeah, I had the 2-meat sampler brisket. Good, but not a John Sloat smoked brisket, of course.
What would be?
I mean, obviously. And the ribs. The ribs were pretty good.
Yeah.
So
And I drove out this morning for
just to hear me speak.
Just to hear you speak. Yes, had nothing to do with connecting with the variety of
yes
Charis Fellowship people there. But
yeah.
Yes, was And what did you speak on? I don't think you mentioned
So
that.
this morning I spoke on the modern identity crisis and the image of God.
Yeah, and you did sort of a survey overview of like Carl Trueman, Charles Taylor, all those guys, and what they have to say about the modern formation of identity.
Yep.
Is that a fair summation?
Yep.
And then moved into sort of a biblical theology of image of God, which was excellent, and almost felt disconnected until the very end when you start talking about the image of God being the basis for our identity, and Christ being our basis for it.
A fixed point in the midst of our identity crisis. So, yes, it was good. What was really cool, and I said this, was seeing so many of our recent graduates.
Oh yeah,
serving in that district. There were at least 6 probably 6 or 7.
Yeah,
and there was another two actually that could have been there but weren't able to attend that are part of that district.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's one of the coolest things.
Yeah, there was a current deploy student there. There was a deploy graduate there.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a very lively room. Like that was a good group today.
It was.
I, of course, ended up at the table with people working on capital campaigns. Did you notice that?
No.
The two people next to me mentioned their prayer request. One was raising money for a capital campaign. The other was are now breaking ground with our capital campaign money.
Yes. I do remember that now. Yes. How fortuitous.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. All right. We should move on. We are continuing our series today on the miracles of Jesus. This is Landing the Plane here, part 4, wrapping it up.
Are we done today
Yeah.
with this? Okay.
Yeah. Which probably means we need to have a planning meeting.
Do we have no more plans?
I've got an idea for next week or for the next episode.
Which will be like a week and a half.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I've got 2 ideas for the next 2 episodes, and so we've got a little wiggle room, but not much.
Okay.
So we have to get to break into our expense accounts for the podcast and get some lunch at El Arrieros.
Yes.
All right, so we're talking about Jesus' miracles today and concluding with his exorcisms, his casting out of demons. And so
there's a bunch of places we could go for this, right?
Yeah,
I mean, these happen all over the place in the New Testament, or all over the Gospels, where Jesus is casting out these demons.
Yep. So let's just start with what do you think the significance of these particular miracles are? In other words, is there a particular angle that the Gospel writers have in showing us this? When we talked about, for example, when Jesus heals people, he's giving an advanced preview of the restoration of all creation and that sort of thing. Is there an angle that the Gospel writers are approaching these demonic exorcisms from that we should be aware of, other than just, wow, that's really cool, he's powerful?
Yeah. Well, maybe I'll say the obvious, but it shows that Jesus ultimately has authority not just over the physical realm that we've seen with food or with nature, but has authority over the spiritual as well.
Yeah.
I think of Mark chapter 5, right, with this demon-possessed man with legions in him.
Yeah.
Coming at him, and they say, "Please don't send us away. Send us into the pit." He clearly has rule and authority over these things.
Yeah, and that the demons immediately recognize it.
Yeah,
that there's no contest in the sense of like, who do you think you are to assert? It's like, oh crud.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd mention is, it seems that these individuals were shunted to the corners of society a bit, because what do you do with a demon-possessed person?
Yeah.
There was no way humans don't have authority over these. I mean, they were just very difficult people to sort of deal with. And Jesus is showing I'm not just your everyday human being,
Yeah.
but have authority over these things, and therefore I am human, but I'm not only human.
Right. Yeah, and it's one of the things that's striking is, and if you read carefully in the New Testament, you can see this, especially in Acts. There were Jewish exorcists, people who were going around trying to cast out demons. And so actually one of my favorite stories in the book of Acts is in Acts 19. You're familiar with this story. I think you know where I'm going with this. So it's the story of this is in Ephesus, and Paul's doing miracles, and there are these 7 sons of Sceva.
Great name.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is picking up in Acts 19, and let's see where do I want it. Verse 13. Then some of the itinerant Jewish exorcists undertook to invoke the name of the Lord Jesus over those who had evil spirits, saying, I adjure you by the Jesus whom Paul proclaims. What a great statement. 7 sons of a Jewish high priest named Sceva were doing this. But the evil spirit answered them, Jesus I know, and Paul I recognize, but who are you?
Yeah.
And then Luke notes, and the man in whom was the evil spirit leaped on them, mastered all of them, and overpowered them, so that they fled out of that house naked and wounded.
Not a pretty picture.
No. But besides being a humorous story, what it shows is that there is a sense in which it wasn't unprecedented to have someone trying to cast out demons. But what's noticeable is the authority that Jesus has. That he simply commands them and they go.
And the success rate.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it seems from even just reading this story, and it seems like, these guys went from town to town with probably some measured success.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah,
like every now and then they'd,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, we did this, whether it was real or not. They had some measured success, but no one batted 1,000.
Yeah. Yep. So I think part of what stands out is again just Jesus' authority in being able to do this, and that even in Mark 1, the first exorcism recorded in Mark's gospel, Jesus casts out demons, and they are immediately crying out, basically, "We know who you are. You're the Holy One of God." And Jesus is like, "Zip it. I'm not having you talking. Zip it." And so, I think it definitely is an expression of his power over the supernatural realm. Here, I'll make the little side note that we mentioned, I think, last week in terms of we like to make these tidy little distinctions between like healing and exorcisms, and the Gospels are just resistant to that kind of tidy classification there. That oftentimes it's like, oh, this woman had a disabling spirit. A disabling spirit? So that her physical condition was somehow linked to her being possessed by a demon. It's like, those are just things that mess with our contemporary categories. For sure.
Yeah.
But I think for me, what I would want to point to as a starting point for thinking about this is, to me, this is an expression of what you see promised in Genesis 3.
On a smaller scale?
Yes.
Okay.
That you have Jesus as the seed of the woman crushing the head of the serpent, and by extension his demonic forces. He is exercising authority over them.
Because you would see the ultimate fulfillment of that at the cross, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep.
So would these be like little mini conquerings of Jesus, pointing toward that redemptive work that is to come?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I mean, really, in one sense, the sort of paradigmatic expression of this in the Gospels are the temptation narratives in Luke 4 and Matthew 4. And Luke in particular frames it against the backdrop of Genesis 1, 2, and 3 because Luke does the baptism of Jesus, the announcement, "This is my beloved Son," and then he throws the genealogy in there. Which goes backwards from Jesus all the way to Adam, and it ends with the son of Adam, the son of God. And then Satan's first words in his wilderness temptation are, "If you are the Son of God." So clearly hitting on that sonship theme. And by the end of that passage, you're supposed to, if you're reading this sort of in the biblical theological context, you're supposed to go, finally. Finally. Here's the obedient son. Here's the obedient son that Adam never was, that Israel never was, that nobody ever was.
That's right.
And so I think every then act of him casting out demons is an extension of that. And then what's fascinating is if you look in Luke 10. So in Luke 10, you've got Jesus has sent out the 70 or the 72, depending on the textual variant there. And when they come back, what's fascinating is what they say. So this is Luke 10, and we'll pick it up in verse 17. The 72 returned with joy, saying, "Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name." And he said to them, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I've given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions, and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven." So because of their union with Christ, the disciples now have authority over these demonic forces. And so I think all that has to be read against the backdrop of Genesis 3 in particular, that Jesus is the new Adam. And so there's a sense in which – so you mentioned his power over the supernatural realm. We tend to think of that, I think, primarily as, because he's God. I would say a good case can be made that actually, in light of the Genesis background – it's because he is a perfect man.
Oh, interesting.
In other words, he is, as Adam was given dominion over creation in Genesis 1. And so if he had exercised the dominion he was supposed to, like in Genesis 3, that when the serpent came in, that's an unclean thing. He should have immediately ejected the serpent from the garden.
And would have had dominion
over it. And would have
had
the complete authority to do it.
Interesting.
And so now Jesus comes along and is able to do that. So I'm not denying Jesus' deity by any means, obviously. But I think we are quick to say, because he's God, so he's more powerful than Satan.
Yeah.
I want to argue in light of these parallels back to Genesis 1, 2, and 3 that this is actually an expression of his perfect humanity exercising dominion over creation, including the spiritual realm. And this helps us make sense of that weird verse in 1 Corinthians 6. You know what I'm talking about? Where he's talking about dealing with or is it 5? I think it might be 5, where it's dealing with lawsuits in the church. And he's saying, I can't believe there's nobody in the congregation who can do this. And he says this throwaway line, don't you know that we will judge angels? And it's like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's the first part of 1 Corinthians 6.
Yeah. And so it's almost like this side note. Yeah, by the way, we're going to judge the angels. And you're like, what?
Yeah. Well, it would make sense based on the argument you're making that perfect humanity has
this is what we as human beings were designed to do. And because Jesus is the perfect man, he has the authority as the new Adam to exercise authority over Satan and his forces.
Oh, interesting. I don't know if I've ever gone down that thought train before.
Yeah, now that's not unique to me. I don't think it's an especially common take on those things. But It's not unique to me.
Interesting.
But yeah,
I'm going to have to do some more reading on that.
Yes. So, and then I think, again, that's why by extension the disciples then are able to do that.
Yeah.
And then ultimately you see, Paul says at the end of Romans 16, for example, and the God of peace will soon crush Satan under your feet. Mm-hmm. So we participate in Jesus' victory over the spiritual forces of darkness as a result of that. So, yeah, I think that's maybe a little different angle than perhaps people have thought about before.
Certainly than I had thought before.
Yeah. Another text I wanted to take us to in thinking about this is in Matthew 12. So that's the passage where Jesus is accused of blasphemy against where they accuse him of driving out demons by the power of Beelzebub, by the power of Satan himself. And in response, Jesus talks about, basically you can say bad things about me, but you can't say bad things about the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. And when you look at Matthew 12, I think this is an important passage that helps us understand what's going on also with the exorcisms here. So he uses this analogy, right? This is Matthew 12. We'll pick up in verse – let's see, where do I want to grab that here? Let's go 29. How can someone enter a strong man's house and plunder his goods unless he first binds the strong man? Then indeed he may plunder his house. You think, oh, that's a nice little analogy, Jesus. Well, he's actually alluding to an Old Testament text. It's Isaiah 49. Of course it's Isaiah. You knew
of
that,
course
John.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. The New Testament doesn't refer to any other Old Testament books. Genesis and Isaiah, those are the only two.
I mean, basically, with an occasional psalm thrown in there, I suppose. So Isaiah 49 and verse 20. So Isaiah 49, verse 24 is what I was looking for.
You want me to get it?
Yeah, sure.
How far do you want me to go?
Yes. So let's go 24. Actually, we can just go 24. That'll be fine.
Okay. Can the prey be taken from the mighty, or the captives of a tyrant be rescued?
So yes, I think again it's I think a little clearer in the original languages, but basically I think what Jesus is saying there is, I am the strong man. I am the one who is the stronger man, capable of overcoming the tyrant who has kept people in bondage, and I'm here to release those captives. So I think that's another part of that backdrop of when Jesus himself is articulating why and how he's able to be able to cast out demons, that he's tapping into some of those realities. So, I'm trying to think, is there anything else I wanted to make sure we hit on here? I think I got all the passages I wanted to get. You mentioned the casting out of
that's one of my favorite demon exorcism
Mark
passages.
5, he casts out the legion of demons, and the demons are basically like, can you send us into the pigs instead of the abyss? And Jesus is like, sure. And of course the pigs rush off the cliff, splash down into the Sea of Galilee, and basically puts a big dent in the local economy.
I'm sure, yeah.
Which in part explains why the people there, this is a Gentile area, are like, we'd like you to leave now.
Yeah.
They're freaked out by that. They're freaked out by the fact that this guy who they could not bind, like he was just so overcome by demonic power that they tried to bind him with chains and stuff, and he just snap him, and he was wandering around being a menace, just scaring the crud out of people. So, all right. Well, we haven't said everything we could say about miracles, but I feel like we've touched on.
We've said quite a bit.
I think we've said a decent bit.
Done this for like a month now.
Yeah. So, I guess people will have to tune in next week to see what we will do next.
Yeah, a week from this upcoming Tuesday.
Yeah, so that'll be the 22nd.
Okay.
Okay.
Getting close to Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
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 Is that Thanksgiving week?
It is. Yep. All right. You ready to move on?
I think so.
Time now for this day in sports history.
You know, we did run into somebody today that said one of their favorite parts of the podcast is listening to me stumble through the names of
Yes.
the today's sports history. So.
Yes, and I admitted in that conversation that sometimes my selection criteria includes putting difficult names in just to watch you struggle.
Yeah, and that's fine. It's a good shtick.
Yeah,
I like
it works. It works.
All right, so 1960, Elgin Baylor of the Los Angeles Lakers scores 71 points versus the New York Knicks.
Yeah.
That will not be today's choice.
I didn't think so.
2004, Maria Sharapova.
Okay.
I knew that one.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That was in the age of Sports Center. I got that one.
Yeah.
Becomes the first Russian to win the tennis season-ending WTA Tour Championship. Beat American Serena Williams, who's been around forever.
Yeah, she's ageless practically.
At the Staples Center in Los Angeles.
Okay.
She was quite young, Maria, wasn't she? She won Wimbledon at like 16 or 17, something like that.
Yeah. It's remarkable how, like, for tennis, like the peak is really like, for women in particular, I think, it's like 16 through typically like maybe 23, 24. There's like that 8-year window where they're at their maximum. And Serena Williams is just an exception.
Yeah, it was
She's
like
just,
16 to like eternity, basically, for Serena. Anyway, 2017, 3 UCLA basketball players suspended after admitting shoplifting in China, only released at President Trump's request.
Do you remember this story?
I do remember this story.
Yeah, they went over to play some sort of exhibition.
Uh-huh.
How dumb do you gotta be? Like, first of all, dumb enough to shoplift. Okay, right?
Yeah.
Doing it in China? Like next level dumb. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. Yeah.
Well, it's a different sense of justice over there, you know.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
And a different what's the word I'm looking for? Big brother sense to it, right?
Yes.
I get the impression that everywhere in China there's just cameras watching everything.
I've never been to China, but I would, if I ever do go, I am going to assume that every moment of my time in that country is somehow being surveilled.
Well, I think the visa process to get over there is pretty extensive.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. All
right, 2018, LeBron James passes Wilt Chamberlain for 5th on the NBA's career scoring list with 44 points for the LA Lakers in a victory over the Portland Trail Blazers in LA at the Staples Center.
Yep. Yeah, so, I mean, he's – barring injury, he's going to end up being the all-time leading scorer in NBA history.
Yeah. Now, I almost said LBJ. Do people call him that? Do people call LeBron LBJ? Or is that just something I did in my head just now?
I think I've occasionally heard that.
Okay.
That's not common. Now, I'm old enough where I hear LBJ and I think Lyndon Baines Johnson, the I forget what number president, but after Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The Texan.
Yeah. But I think it's funny anyway. So, who do you like?
Well, we've clearly ruled out Elgin Baylor.
We have, yes. A lot of Lakers on today's.
Well, 2.
Well, 2 Lakers, but another one took place at the Staples Center. So
the tennis match,
kind of 3.
Yep. I'm tempted to go with the basketball shoplifting.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Have you followed at all, by the way, the whole Brittany Griner story? Her being detained in Russia?
Mm-hmm. I followed it a little bit. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of development. Like it sounds like the government's trying to do some sort of prisoner swap.
That's my understanding.
Or something.
Yeah.
But that's wild.
Yeah. And she was sentenced to like 9 years for possession of it was marijuana, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was just a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, something that, here in the States would be looked at as maybe at best, a slap on the wrist kind of thing.
Misdemeanor for sure.
Yeah.
If anything.
But, it's just surprising to me that athletes don't recognize enough, like, yeah, the kind of stuff you get away with in the U.S., that doesn't work in regimes like China and Russia. So anyway, we'll pick on those UCLA players for that. All right. One thing you liked.
Okay, so I am making mine up on the spot. I have been listening to a novel. I listened to a good bit of it on the drive today. It's a British author. She is being pitched as like a modern day Agatha Christie. I've mentioned her before on the podcast, but I've been reading one of her books. Really, really interesting. I haven't finished it yet, so I feel weird recommending it without finishing it, Mm-hmm. But I'm blanking on the title. One at a Time or One by One by Ruth. Oh, my goodness. One by One by Ruth Ware is the name of the book.
Oh, I've read some Ruth Ware books.
Yeah. She's a great sort of whodunit novel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The one I'm reading right now takes place in like this ski lodge in Switzerland, I think near Geneva. Sort of up in the mountains, the chateau sort of place. Mm-hmm. And they bring in this tech company for a retreat, and the tech company is trying to decide, do we sell, do we not sell, sort of the ins and outs of that. So there's like some dynamics going on. And there's only 2 employees that run this whole chateau thing. And an avalanche comes down and buries them inside the chateau. And it's about them trying to get along, and somebody just died and all these things. So it's.
I think I've read this one.
Have you?
I think so.
They lost one of their compadres skiing down the mountain, and
yeah.
they don't know where she is or what happened to her.
Yeah. I think I've read this one.
It's very good.
Yeah. Ruth Ware is actually a very good author. She's very good, like you said, at sort of the whodunit.
Oh yeah. And she's got a ton of stuff on Scribd, which helps.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm also going to go with the book, and I mentioned so I forget how many episodes ago now we did our fictional characters we'd enjoy hanging with, and one of them I mentioned was Ove from a book called A Man Called Ove, and that made me think I want to go back and read that again. So I just finished it again, and it was in some ways even better the second time around. Loved it. One of the reasons I love that book is just because it is a besides it's good writing. Frederick Bachman or Bachman, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, is just really good at creating characters. And one of the cool things about the book is it's not a Christian book, but it shows the power of community in bringing a person out of despair. And so I'll just leave it at that without
they made
ruining.
They made a movie of that book as well. Have you seen the movie?
Well, I feel like there's been 2.
Really?
Well, there was one that was made that was I think made in Sweden. And so it's subtitles and all that kind of stuff. And then I knew they were going to make an American adaptation of it. So I've not seen either of them. To be honest, I'm a little hesitant because I love the book so much.
Yeah.
I know the movie's going to be a letdown.
Yeah.
It's just inevitable. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality of moving from books to movies. You can only do so much with a movie. The book has so much more texture.
And I have not read this book, but I imagine it's a lot of inner dialogue.
Yep.
That's really hard to bring
capture in a movie for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I don't think that was a train wreck. Do you?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think that'll go in the bottom 5 list of episodes. And let's be honest, we were both worried about that because
we were
recording at a strange time. We're both tired.
There's a party of demon students going on out there. Doctorate of ministry, not demon. Yes. I understand.
Yes.
One has poked his head in the window here already.
No sports that we could really talk about because we're recording so far in advance.
Yeah.
It had all the makings of a disaster. And I think we salvaged it.
I think so. It helped it was 150. We got a good 10, 12 minutes out of that.
Yeah, for sure. So, in any case, we have talked our 150th episode. We've talked our time in Columbus. We've talked miracles, Jesus' exorcisms. We have talked UCLA basketball players being knuckleheads and shoplifting in China. We've talked about a Ruth Ware book, and we've talked about a Frederick Backman book. And so I think by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. And so...
In fact, it's been about everything but sports today.
It has. I mean, this day it's sports.
This day it's sports.
But still, I mean, all they did was they shoplifted. It's not like they did something like...
It wasn't real sports.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's drama surrounding sports.
Yes.
So, anyway. So, all that's left to say is, until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.